Here's a number that should stop you. Over 1,500 species: penguins, dolphins, sheep, giraffes, lions, bonobos, and humans, in literally every culture ever studied, going back as far as recorded history goes. Now here's the part that should actually bother you if you know anything about evolution. Natural selection is supposed to be ruthless. Any trait that doesn't help an individual reproduce should get quietly erased over a few generations. No mercy, no exceptions, no sentimentality. That's the entire engine of the theory. So why hasn't it erased this? Homosexuality hasn't just survived at the margins. It's shown up again and again, independently, across the animal kingdom, at stable and measurable rates, for as long as we've had the tools to look. And that's the puzzle real evolutionary biologists have been chasing for decades. If reproduction is the whole game, why does a trait that doesn't directly produce offspring keep showing up, generation after generation, species after species? The lazy answer is that it's a mistake. A glitch evolution simply hasn't gotten around to fixing yet. That answer doesn't survive contact with the data. Evolution is remarkably efficient at eliminating costly, non-reproductive traits within just a handful of generations, when there's real pressure against them. A trait persisting at meaningful, consistent frequencies across hundreds of unrelated species for this long isn't what a glitch looks like. It's what a trade-off looks like. Let's start with the assumption most people carry without ever examining it, that evolution only cares about an individual's own reproduction. It doesn't. Evolution cares about which genes make it into the next generation. And there's more than one route for a gene to get there. Start with the concept that gave this field its first real foothold: kin selection. Proposed formally by biologist W.D. Hamilton in the 1960s, kin selection explains how a gene can spread even when the individual carrying it never reproduces directly, as long as that individual helps close relatives, who share a significant portion of the same genetic material, survive and reproduce more successfully. A gene doesn't need you personally to have children. It just needs copies of itself moving forward, by whatever route gets them there. This led directly to what researchers sometimes call the helper in the nest hypothesis. In several traditional societies studied by anthropologists, including work on Samoan Fa'afafine, a long-recognized non-heterosexual role within Samoan culture, researcher Paul Vasey has documented that individuals in these roles often invest heavily in the well-being of nieces, nephews, and extended family, sometimes well beyond what's typical. If that increased investment measurably improves the survival odds of relatives who carry a meaningful share of the same genes, those genes could still spread through the family line, just indirectly, through someone else's children rather than one's own. Here's the part nobody talks about, though. Kin selection alone doesn't fully explain the numbers. It's a real documented mechanism, but on its own it likely isn't strong enough to account for homosexuality persisting at the frequencies actually observed across so many populations. So researchers went looking for other pieces of the puzzle, and found several. One of the most compelling is the sexually antagonistic selection hypothesis. This one flips the question entirely. Instead of asking what benefit an individual gay man or woman gets directly, it asks what a gene does across an entire family line, in both sexes. Research led by geneticist Andrea Camperio-Ciani found that the female relatives of gay men, particularly maternal line relatives, tend to have more children on average than the female relatives of straight men. The hypothesis suggests that certain genes, likely on the X chromosome, may increase fertility and attractiveness-related traits when expressed in females, while the same genes, expressed differently in some male carriers, correlate instead with same-sex attraction. The gene isn't for homosexuality specifically. It's for something else entirely. And homosexuality may be a downstream side effect in some carriers, riding along with a trait that's actively beneficial elsewhere in the family tree. Now here's where it connects to something even bigger: the social bonding hypothesis. This one steps almost entirely outside genetics and looks at group survival instead. In highly social primate species, bonobos are the textbook case, same-sex sexual behavior is remarkably common and appears to serve a clear function: reducing tension, building alliances, and reinforcing social bonds within the group. Primatologist Frans de Waal has documented this extensively in bonobo populations, where same-sex interactions occur frequently and correlate with reduced aggression and stronger group cohesion. A tightly bonded group defends territory, locates food, and survives predator pressure more effectively than a group riddled with internal conflict. If early human social groups benefited the same way, a trait contributing to group stability could be favored by selection acting at the level of the group, even without directly increasing any one individual's personal reproduction. There's a fourth layer too, one that shows up specifically in the archaeological and historical record rather than biology labs: cross-cultural persistence over deep time. Same-sex relationships and unions appear across a striking range of documented ancient societies, recorded and largely accepted in classical Greek and Roman texts, referenced in certain indigenous North American traditions through recognized two-spirit roles, and documented in various forms across parts of ancient China and Japan. This isn't evidence for any single biological mechanism on its own, but it does undercut the idea that homosexuality is some kind of recent cultural invention or modern deviation. The pattern is old, geographically scattered, and shows up independently in societies that had no contact with one another, which is exactly the kind of pattern you'd expect if something biologically real were running underneath it, rather than a single culture's passing trend spreading outward. There's also a biological layer that doesn't involve inherited genes at all: the prenatal hormone environment. Some of the strongest, most consistently replicated findings involve something called the fraternal birth order effect. The observation, confirmed across multiple independent studies, that men with more older biological brothers have a statistically higher likelihood of being gay, with the odds increasing with each additional older brother. Researcher Anthony Bogert and colleagues have linked this to a maternal immune response. With each male pregnancy, a mother's immune system may build up antibodies to proteins involved in male fetal brain development. And in later-born sons, this immune response may subtly alter development in the womb. This isn't inheritance in the traditional genetic sense at all. It's a biological mechanism operating during pregnancy itself, and it appears to account for a meaningful share of male homosexuality specifically, though notably not female homosexuality, where the underlying mechanisms appear to be different and are still being actively researched. So here's the honest scientific summary. No single explanation fully accounts for this on its own. Twin studies consistently show a real but partial genetic component. Identical twins share sexual orientation more often than fraternal twins, but far from 100% of the time, which tells researchers that genetics alone isn't the whole story. Environment, prenatal biology, and social factors all appear to play meaningful roles too, layered on top of whatever genetic predisposition exists. Anyone claiming science has found the gay gene, one clean single cause, is oversimplifying research that most working scientists would describe as still actively unfolding. What all of these hypotheses share, though, is a reframe of the original question. Homosexuality isn't a puzzle because it's rare or unnatural. It's observed too consistently across too many species, cultures, and eras for that framing to hold up. It's a puzzle because evolution's math is more sophisticated than individual reproduction or nothing. Genes can spread by helping relatives thrive. Genes can boost fertility in one sex while producing a different trait in the other. Traits can be favored because they strengthen the group a person belongs to, not just their own individual output. And development in the womb can shape outcomes in ways that have nothing to do with inheritance at all. And here's the part that connects back to something bigger than biology. For a long time, cultures assumed that anything that didn't lead directly to individual reproduction had to be an error, a flaw evolution simply failed to catch. The actual science says the opposite. A trait this persistent, this widespread, showing up independently in over 1,000 species and across every documented human civilization, isn't evidence of a mistake nature forgot to correct. It's evidence that nature's math was never as simple as we assumed it to be.